for algebra class for Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Today we're going to talk about solving the quadratic function. Today, students will factor trinomials into two binomials. Please take out your math journal or take out a piece of paper. You should be solving problems with me while watching this live class. Okay, we're waiting for a video.
Okay. Yeah. Bi means two, so what binomial is? A polynomial with two terms like this. 8x minus 3 or y plus 10. And what if you want to multiply them? A binomial times another binomial. There's an acronym. If you're ready, I'll show you, bro. It reminds you how to distribute each term. I'll do it first, then you can have a turn. FOIL, which means block, stop, and pee. That's ironic, cause this will help you succeed. First outside, inside last. FOIL will help you do the math. First, multiply the first terms in each binomial. Then outside, inside last, I'm showing you. Add the products and simplify as needed. And if that was too fast, I'm happy to repeat it. First outside, inside last. Tell them FOIL when you do the math. First outside, inside last. Tell them FOIL when you do the math. Use a different example than before. 5x plus 2 times negative 3x minus 4. First outside, inside last. Tell them FOIL when you do the math, do the math. And this is what you'll have. Simplify the expression, I'll do it fast. Now combine like terms. To make it shorter, it's the distributive property of multiplication in a different order. First outside, inside last. Tell them FOIL when you do the math. First outside, inside last. Tell them FOIL when you do the math. First outside, inside last. Tell them FOIL when you do the math. First outside, inside last. Tell them FOIL when you do the math.
Okay, we're going to review how to use FOIL. So some vocabulary we're going to talk about is factoring. Quadratic factoring is, we'll practice factoring. Quadratic is when you have x to the second power. Trinomial is when you have three terms. The zero of a function is when it's equal, when the whole trinomial is equal to 0. Linear is when you have just an x, so that'd be x to the first power. And exponential is when it's to the x power. The roots of a function are the same as the zero of a function. The roots of a function is when the whole thing is equal to 0. The solution of the function is the values of x. And the quadratic equation in standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And what your quadratic equation allows you to solve for x. Okay, this is vocabulary activity. The zero product property says if x times y equals 0, then either x is equal to 0 or y is equal to 0.
So what we have here is we have x times x minus 8. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be kind of a setup for us to be able to get prepared. So far we've always been working factoring, right? That's all we've really been doing. Now we're going to kind of take a little break away from factoring, and I just want you guys to understand one little rule. The rule is what we call the zero product property. Let's pretend A and B are real numbers, all right? If A times B equals 0, think about all the numbers that A and B could be. If A and B equals 0, Katie, you guys need to think about this. If A and B equals 0, okay, what does A or B, one of them, have to be? Yes, Jacob. 0. One of them has to be 0, right? So therefore, we can write A equals 0 or B equals 0. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what I have now is, do you guys see I have two factors, right? This would be like me factoring something out. Here I have two factors. If two factors multiply to give me 0, what is it we know about one of those factors? One of those factors has to equal 0. So what you do is you just take away the multiplication. You just say x equals 0 or x minus 8 equals 0. Then you solve for x. This one's already solved for x. Add 8 to the other side, x equals 8. So therefore, your two solutions, the solutions that are going to make this true are x equals 0 or x equals 8. And let's plug them in, see if that works. If I plug a 0 in for x, all right, 0 times negative 8 gives me 0. If I plug in 8, 8 minus 0 is 0. 0 times 8 is 0. So both of those work.
Okay, this is a video about what is the quadratic equation.
All of us remember what quadratic polynomials are. The general form of a quadratic polynomial is ax squared plus bx plus c, where the constant a is not equal to 0. The degree of the quadratic polynomial is 2. So what's a quadratic equation? An equation, as we know, always has two sides, one on each side of the equal to sign. When we equate this general form of a quadratic polynomial to 0, we get the general or standard form of a quadratic equation. Remember that a is not equal to 0 and the constants a, b and c are real numbers. For instance, 2x squared plus 4x plus 2 equals 0 is a quadratic equation. Comparing it to the standard form, we get a as 2, b as 4 and c as 2. A is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant. This is called a quadratic equation in variable x. X squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0 is also a quadratic equation. Negative 3x squared plus 12 equals 0 too. Yes, you might not see the x with power 1 in this equation, but it still is a quadratic equation. That's because the degree of the polynomial on the left is still 2. Can you find the values of a, b, and c in each of these cases? Here are the values. Notice that in the second case, the value of coefficient of x is 0. And that's not a problem at all. The important condition is that a must not be equal to 0. We can say that a quadratic equation is of the form p of x equals 0, where p of x is a polynomial of degree 2. Does it have any application in real life? Say you're asked to build a rectangular football field with an area equal to 7,000 square meters. And you're also told that the length of the field should be 30 meters more than its width. How would you build the field? Say this is the rectangular field. Its area is 7,000 square meters. If its width is x meters, then based on the condition given, its length will be x plus 30 meters. The area of a rectangle is nothing but the product of its length and breadth. Hence, x times x plus 30 will equal 7,000. Rewriting this will give us the quadratic equation as x squared plus 30x minus 7,000 equals 0. And this is nothing but a quadratic equation. But how will this give us the value of x? That's what we will learn in the coming videos.
Okay, what type of functions does each line represent? Y equals 3 to the x power plus 2, y equals 3x plus 4, and green is y equals x squared plus 3x plus 4. Well, the red one, y equals 3 to the x plus 2. So it begins at 2. It begins at 2, right here. It begins at 3 because 3 to the x power is 3 to the 0 power is 1. So 1 plus 2 is 3. So it begins at 3, and then it's going up. It's an exponential function. So the blue one, negative 3x plus 4. So it begins at 4, and then it's going down 3 and over 1. It is linear. And y equals x squared plus 3x plus 1. It is U-shaped. So it begins actually at 1. The y-intercept is 1. Okay? And it's U-shaped. So it is quadratic function. So a quadratic function has different parts. So it has a parabola. A parabola means that it's U-shaped. It has an x-intercept. Okay, a parabola means that it's U-shaped. The x-intercept is actually right here. The x-intercept is at -4 and at -1. It has two x-intercepts. So it has an x-intercept at -4 and at -1. The axis of symmetry is right here in purple. The axis of symmetry is what splits it in half. It's like a mirror image. The axis of symmetry is at like -1.5. The vertex is right here. The vertex is the point, the lowest point. On this one, if it was concave up, it would be the highest point. The vertex is on the axis of symmetry. It's in this one, it's the lowest point. The y-intercept right here is at 4. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. And the solutions, roots, and zeros of the function are the same as the x-intercept. So the solutions, roots, and 0 are at x equals -4 and -1 of this function. Okay, we're waiting for a video.
what does it mean to solve a quadratic equation? Well, I'm going to connect a quadratic equation to the graph. Now, if you look at this graph here, you'll see that it is a parabola, P-A-R-A-B-O-L-A, and it intersects the x-axis and the y-axis. In this case, the x-intercepts in two places, place A and place B. And place A is at -3, 0, and point B is at 1, 0. The y-intercept is at 0, -3. So let's look at the actual equation. The equation is y is equal to x squared plus 2x minus 3. And this equation is actually in y-intercept or slope-intercept form. And since it is in slope-intercept form, the -3 is actually the y-intercept. So if you look here on the graph, you'll see that the y-intercept is at 0, -3, which matches up to this one. Now, if we factor this expanded form of the equation, we get y is equal to x plus 3 times x minus 1. So this is the same as this one here. Now, solution of a quadratic equation is when you find x knowing that y is 0. So when y is 0, so if we look here, y is 0, that means that either x plus 3 has to be 0, or x minus 1 has to be 0, or both of these are 0. So 0 times x minus 1 will give y is equal to 0, or x plus 3 times 0 will give y is equal to 0. In order to get x plus 3 equal to 0, that means x has to be -3, because -3 plus 3 is 0. And x minus 1, x will have to be +1, because +1 minus 1 is 0. So if you look here, here's the solution. X plus 3 is equal to 0, minus 3 on both sides, and you get x equal to -3. Here, x minus 1 equals 0, add 1 to both sides, and you get x is equal to +1. Now, looking at these solutions, -3 and +1, these solutions relate to the graph by the x-intercepts. So look at this -3. We can look at this A point, and we see that the point A is at -3 when y is 0. X is -3 when y is 0. And the B point is x is +1 when y is 0. So this is how the graph relates to the equation. And you can actually use this graph to help you with factoring. Here, if you have the expanded form, you can put this in Desmos. And in Desmos, you will get the graph. And the graph will show you the 2 points where it crosses the x-axis. And those 2 points would be the expanded form. So in this case, it would be x plus 3 and x minus 1. Try it.
Okay.
We want to solve each equation by factoring. The first step in factoring is to factor out the greatest common factor. Looking at our first example, we have x squared plus 4x equals 0. Notice how they both share a common factor of x, which is the greatest common factor. So if we factor out x, we would have x times the quantity x plus 4 equals 0. Notice x times x is x squared, and x times 4 is equal to 4x. And now we can use the zero product property to solve this equation, meaning if we have x times the quantity x plus 4 equals 0, either the first factor of x must equal 0, or the factor of x plus 4 must equal 0. Well, this equation is already solved for x, but for the second equation we'll have to subtract 4 on both sides, and we have x equals negative 4. So our solutions are x equals 0, or x equals negative 4. Looking at our second equation, we always want to start by looking for the greatest common factor. So we have 14x squared minus 35x. Here the greatest common factor would be 7x, since we can write 14x squared as 2 times 7 times x, and 35 would be 5 times 7 times x. Notice both terms have a factor of 7 as well as a factor of x. So in factored form, we would have 7x times the quantity 2x minus 5 equals 0. And now using the zero product property, we have 7x times the quantity 2x minus 5 equals 0. So either 7x equals 0 or 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. But here we could divide both sides by 7, but we're still going to have x equals 0. Over here we would add 5 to both sides. That would give us 2x equals 5, and divide both sides by 2. So we have x equals 5 halves. So our solutions are x equals 0 or x equals 5 halves. So it is important to remember, whenever factoring, the first step is to factor out the greatest common factor. I hope you found this helpful.
Okay, so let's factor x squared minus 5x using the greatest common factor. Okay. So the greatest common factor that they both have in common is they both have an x in common. So I can factor out an x. So x times what gets me x squared? So x times x is equal to x squared. And then x times negative 5 gives me negative 5x. So the greatest common factor is x times x minus 5. Now, if I wanted to find the x and y intercepts, the x-intercept is when all this is equal to 0. So that means x is equal to 0 or x minus 5 is equal to 0. So that means x is equal to 0 or x is equal to 5. So the x-intercepts are 0, 0 and 0, 5. And let's go into Desmos to see where the y-intercept is. So you can click on Desmos Graphing Calculator or go on the app on your phone. And we're going to type in x parentheses x minus 5 equals 0. Or you could type in x squared minus 5x equals 0. So we're going to go into Desmos Graphing Calculator. Oh no. Oh, no. Okay. So the y-intercept is at 0, 0, 2 when you look in Desmos calculator in the graph. So the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis.
We are going to solve quadratic equations by factoring using algebra tiles. And we're going to be factoring trinomials into binomials. So the first one we're going to do is x squared minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. And we start out by making a rectangle, and we're going to load the first term of the quadratic and the last term. So here's x squared, that's loaded already, and here we're going to load the last one. But we need to know which way we're going to load the last one. Are we going to in order to get negative 8, are we going to multiply 2 times negative 4, negative 2 times 4, 8 times negative 1, negative 8 times 1? Which one do you choose? Let's just choose the last one. We're just choosing any one. So we're going to choose the last one. All right, so choosing the last one, we get x squared, and we get 8, negative 8 as the constant. All right, now in order to get x squared, we would have to multiply x times x. And in order to get negative 8, we would have to multiply 1 times negative 8. So that's how we got that. Now, if we have 1 times negative 8 here, that means we also have 1 times x. And 1 times x would give us x. And here we have 1 times negative 8 gives us negative 8. That means we have x times negative 8, which would give us negative 8x here. Looks like that. Okay. So again, x times x is x squared. X times negative 8 is negative 8x. 1 times x gives us positive x. And 1 times negative 8 will give us negative 8. So first step, we did the x squared terms. Second step, we're going to just do the x terms. We did the negative 8 with here, this x's, and positive 1x here. Now we're going to combine like terms. So when we combine like terms, we see that we get a 0 pair because we have a red x and a green x. So we can take that out. So what we have left is negative 7x here. So we combine like terms, we get x squared minus 7x minus 8. That's what we get here. And we're matching to the original problem, which means this is not going to work because it doesn't match the original problem. The original problem is x squared minus 2x minus 8. It is not x squared plus 7x minus 8. So we had to start again. 1 times negative 8 did not work. We picked that last one, but it didn't work. So we can't just pick any combination of numbers willy-nilly. We have to pick something that's going to work. So our mistake was that 1 times negative 8, it did give us negative 8, but 1 plus negative 8 gives us negative 7, but we need negative 2, like in this box here. We needed a negative 2. 1 times negative 8 gave us the negative 8, which we needed, but we have to add those two numbers in order to get the middle term. So we have to add 1 plus negative 8. and 1 plus negative 8 is equal to negative 7, not negative 2. So let's try the other expressions, the other equations. Negative 1 times 8 gives us negative 8. But does negative 1 plus 8 give us negative 2? Nope. How about negative 2 times 4 is negative 8? Does negative 2 plus 4 give us negative 2? No. It gives us a positive 2. And lastly, 2 times negative 4 equals negative 8. And 2 plus negative 4 is equal to 2. Yep. That's the one. So let's do it again. First step, we're going to load in the first and last term. So we're going to load in x squared, and we're going to load in the positive 8. But this time we're doing x times negative 4 and x times positive 2. Okay? So, because we're doing positive 2, we have to have 2 rows of this. And we also have to have, all this has to be lined up because our goal is to make a rectangle. So, x times x is x squared. X times 1, negative 1 is negative x. We have 4 of those. Then 1 times x is x. We have 2 of those. And then 1 times negative 1 is negative 1, and we have 8 of those. So again, x times negative 1 is a negative x, and 1 times x is x. Next page. Combine like terms. We're going to find all the 0 pairs. So we have 2 sets of 0 pairs. What do we have left after that? We have x squared. Okay, so here is the factored form. X minus 4, x plus 2 equals 0. And that means that we have x squared minus 2x minus 8. X squared minus 2x minus 8. That's our check. Okay. Next page. Does it match? Yes. Did you check? X squared minus 2x minus 8. Now we have to still find a solution. We still haven't found it yet. So we did factor it. So we have x plus 2 times x minus 4 is equal to 0. But we need to know what is x when y is 0. So in order to find that, we know that x plus 2 is 0 or x minus 4 is 0 in order for it to be 0. So we're going to set each one as 0. X plus 2 is equal to 0. We subtract 2 from both sides and we get x equals negative 2. Here we get x minus 4 is equal to 0. Add 4 to both sides, we get x is equal to 4. So when y is 0, x is negative 2. Or when y is 0, x is equal to 4. If this was on a graph, we would see a parabola and we would see 2 x-intercepts, one at negative 2, 0, and one at 4, 0. Here's the graph. And if we want to check our work on the graph, if we were to go into Desmos, we will see it at the x-intercepts here, in which we do. Also, in the original equation, we can plug in negative 2. So wherever we see x, we'll plug in negative 2. So negative 2 squared minus 2 times negative 2 minus 8 is equal to 0. We get 4 plus 4 minus 8, and that does equal 0. And here we're going to plug in 4. We get 4 squared.
Okay, so here we have a problem. X squared minus 5x minus 6. Okay. Okay. So we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply that multiply to -6 but add to -5. Two numbers that multiply to -6 but add to -5. Okay, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to -6 but add to -5. So let's pick two numbers that multiply to -6. So -3 times -2 times 2. -3 times 2 multiplies to -6. But does -3 plus 2 add to -5? No. -3 plus 2 adds 1. So -3 and -2 are not solutions. Let's do -6 plus 1. -6 times 1 is equal to -6. -6 plus 1 is equal to -5. So -6 and 1 are the answer. -6 times 1 is equal to -6, and -6 plus 1 is equal to -5. So our two numbers are -6 and 1. So we have -6 right here. So if we were trying to factor this, what will we need here? X and -6. X times -6 is -6x. So we're going to put 6 negative x's. Okay, so -6x. X times -6 is -6x. And x times 1 is 1x. So this is x times x is x squared. X times -6 is -6x. 1 times x is 1x, and 1 times -6 is -6. So what are we going to put here? We're going to put x minus 6 and x plus 1. So x minus 6 equals 0. X is going to equal to positive 6. X plus 1 equals 0. X is equal to -1. Okay, I'm going to do a few practice problems just to make sure that everybody understands this. So I want you to write down in your journal, I want you to write down this problem. X squared plus 8x plus 15. So we're looking for two numbers equals 0. Okay. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 15 but add to 8. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to 15, but add to 8. So what are those two numbers? What are two numbers that multiply to 15? So 3 times 5 multiplies to 15, and 3 plus 5 adds to 8. So the two numbers are 3 and 5. So what we can say is x plus 3 times x plus 5 is equal to 0. And this is the factor. This is the factor. This is a trinomial that's factored into two binomials. But now, when we want to solve for x, we say x plus 3 is equal to 0, so x is equal to negative 3. And x plus 5 is equal to 0, so x is equal to 5. Negative 5. Now, I'd like us to practice one more problem before you do your classwork assignment. So I'd like you to practice, and I'd like you to do, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to try it on your own. X squared plus 3x minus 10 is equal to 0. So go ahead and pause the video, factor it, and then unpause the video, and we're going to talk about the answer. Okay, so we're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 10, but add to 3. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 10, but add to 3. So those two numbers are negative 5 and 2. So negative 5 times 2 is equal to negative 10, and negative 5 plus 2 is equal to negative 3. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 10 but add to 3. So those two numbers are negative 5 and 2. So this is what I can say. I can say x minus 5 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. So what is the answer? X is equal to positive 5 and x is equal to negative 2. Because x plus 5 is equal to 0 and x plus 2 is equal to 0. And then we solve for x. This is equal to negative 2. So these are the two answers. The answers are x is equal to 5 and x is equal to negative 2. So I would like you to do the extra long quizzes. It's about 20 questions, and they're like this. So I'll see you next week.